A research centre brings together a variety of differing but complementary disciplines who can deep dive into grand challenges, and they can do an awful lot more than a researcher and a PhD on their own. Before the MaREI Centre, I would have supervised PhDs, and we would have published a paper with 2 authors, me and the PhD. Now we have papers with 10 authors, 11 authors. So we borrow the intellectual prowess and expertise of our colleagues to answer complicated questions.
I think for me it's a couple of things. So when we think about resilience, we think about having the kind of infrastructure that we need to kind of fuel the secure energy system that we need for the future. And that's about testing both new technologies, but also looking at deployment of new technologies and engaging with the societies who need to adopt those new technologies. And I think research centres are really kind of uniquely placed to do that, particularly ones like MaREI, who have over the last 13 years built up a really excellent relationship with communities and working with communities in that area.
So there's 3 key ways in which research centres can fuel resilience. One is through its people, the second is through its ideas, and the third is through the translation of those ideas into solutions. So firstly, reflecting on MaREI, we've been hugely fortunate with our people. And this is right across the board in terms of our PhD students, our researchers, contract researchers, our academics and our wonderful support team. And it's through their collaboration, commitment, talent and contributions that we've achieved the successes that we have. The second way in which centres fuel resilience is through the ideas. We're very privileged in universities to have the opportunity to think, to discover, to tease out the problems that the world faces. And within MaREI, we've been hugely successful in delivering research excellence across many areas in our energy systems, in climate change and in the marine environment. And the third way in which we can fuel resilience is through the translation of those ideas into solutions.
Given the times we live in, resilience is the most important part of what a research institute now provides society. When we look at resilience, we're not just talking about reacting to shocks, we're trying to get ahead of shocks of the future. This will require that the research will cover sustainability, competitiveness, but crucially security. And it's in those 3 domains that MaREI in particular has delivered for Ireland and for the research community. As we go forward, this research is going to become much more important, and so building on that platform, I'm delighted that MaREI has been ahead of the game in terms of resilience.
A strong research centre fuels resilience, in my view, by helping society make better decisions before the challenges become crises. The real value of research is not in endorsing change in the abstract or in cheerleading for particular solutions, but in helping society choose pathways that are scientifically sound, economically credible, and strategically resilient.
Perhaps the most important output from a centre actually is the talent stream that comes out. The young people, and I mean young people on the whole, who study for doctorates, train as postdocs, and then go on, because they form the next generation who will produce advances, potentially great influence, and may even become themselves world leaders.
I think as well, we're always so busy running forward that we don't get that opportunity to look back and see what the impacts of our projects were and what the other co-benefits were to society. And certainly the work of MaREI have been critical in finding that, and the work we've done across the Sustainable Energy Communities programme.
In the last few decades, we've just seen more and more movement away from traditional science and engineering disciplines and much more towards interdisciplinary kinds of areas. We know that big breakthroughs don't come in the middle of the current disciplines, but rather at the edges where disciplines come together. And I think a research centre that really focuses broadly on a number of disciplines can really help provide our students the best equipment to move forward into a society that is sustainable, secure, and moving forward. At the same time, the researchers have the opportunity to create new partnerships, new methods, new outcomes, and the successes that we need as we move into a much more complex society than we've ever had.
So one of the examples I can think of is the Highlight project, which was a consortium of 26 industry partners that came to MaREI with a problem. They didn't know how hydrogen as an energy source fitted within their industry pathways to decarbonisation. We were able to put together a research programme over 4 years to help them understand how hydrogen can play a role in their organisations and feed towards a decarbonised energy system for Ireland.
And my experience from having these small glimpses of MaREI is that it's what they have been doing there, and that it's been very inspirational for how we develop our research to fuel this transition in terms of the content and the methods.
And research funding creates the space to build trust and relationships over time. That's when the long-term relationship with researchers moves beyond communities being just pilot sites for projects, and it moves into that space of enduring partnerships, and that's when solutions can actually stick in areas.
So I think there's really critical roles that research centres can play in the kind of wider transition landscape. 3 specific examples, all of which MaREI has exemplified really clearly. One is they tend to have roles as trusted brokers in society, so they can bring communities along with the transition process, they can bring policymakers along. The work that MaREI's done, for example, in the Dingle Peninsula is a great example of this. The second thing that research centres are really important for is being able to think systemically, being able to think about problems as a system. There are almost always unintended consequences and trade-offs of things that private sector actors might not necessarily consider. So in MaREI's case, the work they've done around energy transitions and the climate action plan would be great examples of that. And then the third and perhaps most obvious example of the key role of research centres is doing cutting-edge foundational science.
It also becomes a point for industry to access academia, effectively becoming a launchpad for applied research projects.
Research centers that cover the full spectrum, like MaREI, from energy technologies to real-world applications in living labs, are really important to show not just that the technology works, but also that it can be integrated in real-life settings.
Ireland is so dependent on imported fuel, imported energy, that we have a way of solving it ourselves. All we need to do is develop renewable energy.
The beauty of being in a research centre is the interdisciplinarity. The real problems of the world don't come in discipline-shaped boxes. So having access to people who are experts in their respective discipline really helps solve practical problems.
I think it's a good case study because when we started off, the focus really was on technical solutions to renewable energy with industry involvement. But I think over the course of the centre, we've discovered there are so many other aspects that are important to the penetration of renewable energy and to create a sustainable energy system.
Research centres have the unique ability to fuel competitiveness for society in many ways. But what comes to mind for me is really about scale, about talent, and about innovation. So in terms of scale allows for interdisciplinarity, allows for large, big ideas, allows for risk-taking that may not be there without having all of that together. Talent is all about the people. People in MaREI and other centres are really important for everything that we do. And innovation is really about transferring the excellence in research to impact for society and for economy as well.